Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. My name is Daniel. This is Daniel Teaches, the psychology student, bringing you his 2 cents from his lectures, his readings, his notes, and his personal anecdotes throughout life. Thank you so much for being here with me. This is the last episode of 2021 before going into the new year. The next time you hear me, it will be 2022. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this journey. It is an exciting time. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to speak with you all. Speaking of exciting things, my dad just came out with an album. Isn't that something? If you're into instrumental music, go to Spotify, Apple iTunes, or Apple Music. Go to YouTube, type in Another Try by Ramin Misajideen. If you're into instrumental stuff, that might be of interest, especially if you like Latin, especially if you like jazz, and if you like some Middle Eastern stuff. So check that stuff out. Let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic, as you can tell from the title, is about losers. No, okay, it's about flaws equaling beauty. Let me give you an example to make sure that we're on the same page here. So I'm watching Spider-Man, as a grown man does. And the Spider-Man I'm referring to is the old school. It's Tobey Maguire. I want to say 2002. The one with James Franco. And you don't have to see that specific Spider-Man to understand the story, but the story is this. There's a young man who doesn't have any aces in his deck, if you know what I mean. Isn't particularly good looking, fit, isn't a whiz with his words, not like this guy, right? He doesn't have too much going for him. Basically a loser. And I fell in love with this character the first 15, 20 minutes of watching the Spider-Man movie. And I remember sitting there going, why as the audience do we like someone who doesn't have those traits? Why do we cheer people who aren't the most handsome, who aren't the most physically fit, who don't speak well, who doesn't have a girlfriend? Don't you want to cheer on the jock? Don't you want to cheer on the stereotypical, blah, blah, blah? I was talking to a buddy of mine, Nathan, and I may have already mentioned this on the podcast, but the idea was, one of the things that makes us beautiful is that we have flaws. The moment we become flawless, we become less human. And there's beauty in human nature, meaning there's beauty in flaws. So if you are flawless, if you're perfect, I would argue if you don't have any problems, if you are Superman, you lose a little bit of that human relatability, making you less, I don't know if attractive is the right word, but there's definitely harder to connect with you than when we see someone who does have their struggles. See, when you're a 15 to 25-year-old guy and maybe you've gotten asked out a girl, it didn't go so well, when you see Tobey Maguire in that Spider-Man movie and it doesn't go well for him, there's a part of you that connects with him on a human level, regardless that it's a movie, it's a script, and they're actors, but you go, man, if you're a young guy, you know what it feels like to get shut down by your crush, to do homework late on a school night, to not be invited to a party, whatever, right? To have people look down on you, to be invisible to a lot of people, to be alone, to feel like you're misunderstood. And when you see that, you gravitate towards stuff like that. Folks, why do we cheer the underdog? We like seeing people win. We like seeing people come up. We like seeing people get justice, right? Get what they deserve. That doesn't mean we don't cheer people who win constantly, right? We have favorites. We have Lakers and we have the Khabib Nurmagomedovs. They exist, but it's a different psychology when you're cheering someone on who many people are backing against, right? Because at one point or another in your life, you've been in a position where you weren't the favorite. And there's that added anticipation, there's that added, I can do it, I am good. You're proving it, not only to everybody else, but to yourself that you are good enough at whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be sport related. Speaking of sport related, Juliana Pena, Amanda Nunes. If you know, you know. There was a huge upset, arguably the biggest upset of the year. YouTube it if you don't know what I'm talking about. There's something beautiful in an underdog story. There's something beautiful when a person shows flaws, when you're not perfect. Clinical psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson said, I don't love you in spite of your flaws. I love you because of them. Because I can tell that you have struggles just like how I have struggles. You have your insecurities the way I have my insecurities. I know that at least a little bit of how you interact with the world is how I interact with the world. So I feel like when I speak to you about my troubles and about my worries, we can understand one another on a better level. So when you see Tobey Maguire in that Spider-Man movie and he's just being kicked around, he looks invisible to all the pretty girls, he's getting bullied, there's a part of you that maybe remembers or resonates, not being the coolest guy in school, being looked down on, being picked on. And when you see that, you feel it feels a little realistic, right? And it's one thing if a movie makes you think something, but if a movie can make you feel a certain way, empathy, guilt, shame, sadness, you want him to win, you want him to do well, and he doesn't, over and over and over again. And a movie, I've always said, the movie's plot will only be as great as the villain allows it. Hear me out. If the villain is mediocre, what does the hero have to overcome? The greater the villain, the greater the hero has to be to overcome it. Does that make sense? Let's see on a greatness scale. 10 is super great, 1 is terrible. If the villain's like a 5, Captain America can get away with being a 6, or even a 5.5 to overcome the villain. But if the villain's a 9, if it's a Thanos, if it's something gigantic, if the problem and the conflict seems crazy and hard and ridiculous to overcome, now the hero has to rise to another depth to overcome that problem. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, now we've got a story. Because if there is no villain, what is there to overcome? And if you're always winning, if you've won 5, 10 times in a row, it's like, that doesn't mean I'm not a fan, but it's different when I think you're going to lose. It's different when everybody's betting against you. It's different when you've got one chance, one Hail Mary chance, and you go out there and win. When you're not supposed to. When you're not Prince Charming and you go out there and you get the job done. There's a beauty to that. I was at the lake a couple months ago with my family, and it was a very busy lake, and all of a sudden you see these ducklings. There's like one mother duck and like 3 like little baby ducks following her, and you looked around and everybody was just like zooming in on these ducks. Everybody knew where they were. Everyone was keeping their children back so they didn't hit them, and it felt like all of a sudden a bunch of strangers at a lake came together to look out for the safety and well-being of these 4 ducks. We didn't know each other. And yet there was this like non-verbal agreement that we were all going to keep our kids away from the ducks so we don't scare them. And like if we're swimming, like we're going to everyone made a circle. As if the ducks were meant to be there, as if we're working, as if we're like in the animal rescue team. It was crazy to me. And I was thinking like what is so special about these damn ducks? Like who cares? So what? And there's some beauty in it. And I started thinking, well, would it be any different if they were, let's say, 4 dogs, like 4 big dogs? And I thought it would be different. Why? The small ducks have something that 4 big dogs don't. That is fragility. It's the fragile. It's a little duck. It needs protecting, and it's fragile, and it's so easy for it to get hurt or injured or scared, right? That's not saying we don't care about big dogs, let's say, but it's a different mentality. So when you're looking at something, and for example, babies, right? Babies, infants, when you have something so small, so precious, so easily hurt by the world, it's almost like we have this innate just means like this natural, this instinctive, this evolutionary action or motivation to protect it from the world. Especially if we deem it to be small and innocent and unable to defend for itself. One of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen in my entire life, some people know I've been working as a lifeguard for a few years now, is I'm working as a lifeguard, and I'd see this father, maybe he's in his like mid-30s, and he's holding his baby in his hand, right? And this baby's like a year old, like a year and a half old. And as I'm looking at the father smile oh so passionately as he gazes into the eyes of his baby, this thing that he created, I can't stop but think, like, this is his entire life right now. And look at this analogy. When he's holding the baby, he's like in waist deep water, right? He's holding it above water. He's literally protecting it from what? If he drops his hand, well, the baby falls in the water. All around him, there's chaos. You know, beach balls are being thrown around. There's like water sprinklers being hit in the face. And I want you to imagine a young Daniel being a lifeguard, looking at this father holding the baby, a little bit above the surface level of the water, which water can be dangerous. And behind him, there's shouting going on, and sprinklers and kickboards flying and balls flying, and the baby's in the dad's hand. And there's something so beautiful, so safe, so heartwarming about that sight. Right? When we see things that are fragile, when we see things that are in need of protecting, that maybe can't protect themselves, we almost have this urge to protect them, to be alongside them. To get back to the Tobey Maguire movie, it's this idea of, man, you want to stand up for the guy getting bullied. You want to stand up for the guy getting beat up. There's this inner idea of justice and standing up for what's right and giving the poor guy what he deserves. That's what you want to see. I don't want to see a hero who whoops everybody's ass. There's not too much to cheer for, man. You got to build them up for me. You got to give me something. You know, like sometimes, I don't know if you guys are watching the John Wick movies, you guys and gals. John Wick, I'm worried he's going to get to that part where at first, man, you build him up as this guy. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but in any movie, you have to build up the opposition to a serious amount, because if you don't, it's going to put the protagonist, the hero in this case, John Wick, on such a pedestal that before the movie begins, you're going, dude, he's going to make it out of this. Like the Jason Statham, like the Liam Neeson, you know what I mean? You have to have a really good antagonist so that you could at least make me think like, oh, he's really screwed. Like this time it's different. So we got to be careful, right? Because we want our heroes to be strong, but we got to make sure they're fighting for something, right? You need a good dance partner, like in boxing and wrestling and UFC, you need a good dance partner to elevate the fight, right? To elevate the matchup. That's what people want to see, right? A young 11-year-old Daniel was really, I mean, even younger than 11, man, probably 4 or 5-year-old Daniel was really big into WWF. You know what I mean when I say WWF, don't you? Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, The Undertaker, some of those names, and then some of the newer names, the John Cenas and whatnot. And around 11 or 12 years old, Daniel started to kind of, I don't know why I'm talking third person, like I'm The Rock, but I started to kind of move away from that stuff. And largely it was because, you know, I would say there was one era that had Hulk Hogan, and the post-2000 era had this guy by the name of John Cena. I'm sure you've heard of him. And as much of a perfect hero John Cena turns out to be, over time, he starts to look flawless. He starts to look superior. Right? Even though it's rigged, it doesn't matter it's rigged or scripted. The fact is, you see someone who looks like a hero, except they look flawless and they win all the time. So what happens? Right? It's like you're not as emotionally invested because you're pretty sure they're going to win because they've been winning back to back to back to back. It's like, well, what are you cheering for anymore, right? That he's not the underdog anymore. You almost know with a 90-80% chance he's going to win anything that he does, any match that he participates in, right? And it loses that wow factor. But when you see someone have flaws, when you see someone make mistakes, like I really have a soft spot for the person who comes in second place or third place in whatever competition, tournament, because you're so close, but you haven't quite grasped it yet. I always want the team or the guy to win that hasn't won it yet. That's why it was so cool when Charles Oliveira won recently. I want the person to win who's been putting in their time. That doesn't mean that if you're already at the top, you don't have any fans, but it's different, right? It's the underdog story. It's the I love you because of your flaws, not despite your flaws. Right? When you meet a young woman or a young man and you want to pursue them romantically, there is something so beautiful about people who make mistakes. If you never made mistakes, if you didn't have your own problems, if everything you did was perfect, something would be off. This human connection of mistakes and acne and stuttering, falling, being clumsy, like that adds something to us that I don't think enough people appreciate. You know, the more we move to, in my opinion, everyone, the Captain America looking, big shoulders, big chest, perfect skin, perfect hair, no wrinkles, no acne, I feel like it's not getting more beautiful. It's getting more like something, but I wouldn't put the word beautiful on it. Right? And a lot of times I see Instagram photos and I can't think in my head going, how many pictures did you take? 100? How much time did you spend on that Photoshop app? 20 minutes? What filter did you settle on? And there's, look, everyone does it. So I don't want to make you feel bad if that's you. But I just, not to sound like a giant catfish, but have you ever seen a profile online? You're like, wow. And then you meet them in person, you're like, oh. Because there's such a big difference between what they portray online and what they are in real life, man. I almost tell all female friends of mine, I'm like, dude, it'd be nice if you wore less makeup. And this is just purely my own opinion. I'm not saying this is a fact or anything, but there's something I really like about people that look human. And for whatever reason, those girls on the magazines, the girls that I see on Instagram, they just don't look real to me. Like, I'll see them, and then I'll go on campus, and I'll be like, yo, you people don't exist. Right? Or I'll see a girl with a lot of makeup, and the next day without makeup, and there's just a huge disparity. Yeah, and I know you're going to hit me with, well, Daniel, she doesn't put on makeup for you. It's like, fair enough, right? But going back to that earlier idea of like, the more we try to cover up our flaws, let's say you're covering up acne with makeup, or you're, like I saw this photo shoot where this girl put this giant, I don't know if it was styrofoam or what, like in her, she was wearing leggings, like in her leggings, like to make her butt look like twice as big. You know, when you look at that, in one sense, you're like, well, great, right? Because that's what societal standards, like, that's what we want. We want a certain image. But on the other hand, it makes you less human. It makes you less relatable. You want to see who gets real hate online? Look at people who are very attractive, or who are in the extreme at something. Very attractive, or very physically fit. Because it's hard to relate to them. We like someone to get famous who looks relatable. Who doesn't look like, they can look good. They should look good, mind you. We like attractive people because for some reason we think that attractive people are more sociable and they're better people. But by better people, I mean like kinder people, which isn't true. Your level of attractiveness has nothing to do with your social skills. Actually, I found that sometimes attractive people have poor social skills because sometimes when you're attractive, more people approach you as opposed to you doing the approaching. That's one problem that sometimes very good-looking girls fall into. When you're a very good-looking girl, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them, you can sit back, people will come to you. Like, you could have the talking skills of an acorn, right? Like, you don't need it. Right? They'll talk. They'll talk for you, right? But then watch them go and try to initiate a conversation. That's interesting, and it has nothing to do with stereotypes. It's just practice, right? Going back to the topic, there's an aspect of flawless, and there's an aspect of just beauty and being natural and being yourself. And there is something really special about seeing someone on a pedestal that looks like the average guy. Like, we love hearing stories of, oh man, he was just a regular factory worker and then he became, you know, Jamie Vardy, the footballer, blah, blah. Like, we like hearing that stuff, right? Because we see ourselves in them. We go, oh man, in this capitalistic society, in this hierarchy, I can climb up the social ladder too. But if every time the person in your view comes from a certain rich neighborhood and parents were a certain way, you don't see yourself in them. Why is Steve Rogers such a badass? Because if you saw Captain America 1, you saw what he was beforehand. Skinny, smaller, getting picked on, getting beat up. He still had his personality, he still had his heart and his courage, but he was a very good example of someone who, you know, you want to win. You want him to do well. So then when he does that transition and gets all big and buff, you're going like, yeah, this is awesome. Because I saw you get beat up, right? I saw you get teased. I saw you get picked on. So it's great to see you now do so good for yourself. So let's stop looking at flaws as something that's wrong or needs to be fixed necessarily. I mean, look, you should improve yourself. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this isn't, you know, you're 400 pounds overweight saying, well, Daniel said someone's going to love me because I'm obese. It's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm not saying we can't improve ourselves, but I'm saying the fact that we have to hide our flaws and pretend like we don't get acne, like we don't have off days, like we don't stutter in public, we don't fall, we don't say something stupid, you've never failed a test, you've never been rejected from a job. I don't think that's the right way. I really don't. I think we focus on improving ourselves, but if you make a mistake, man, I'm human. And I think there's beauty in that. And when I come out and say, hey, I made a mistake, maybe there's two people listening that also made a mistake. And them hearing that, both of them who don't know each other go, oh, thank God I'm not alone. Maybe I don't have a problem. Maybe it's normal to make mistakes. Because God forbid you have acne. Huh? Or you're a guy who's under 6 foot tall. Or you're a girl who doesn't fit the typical skinny model, facade of the magazine cover, which is BS anyways. Because we're human beings, man. And people look different. And people act differently. And we make mistakes. What if no one made mistakes ever again? What if everyone's skin was always perfect? That's not realistic, and that's not us. We're not machines, we're not robots. We're not computers. Sure, a computer could be perfect in the sense if you press on an application, it'll open up. But we're not machines, we're not robots, we're not technology, we're human beings. right? We've got things that we can do and things that go very well for us. We've got things that we can't do and things that don't go very well for us. And I think instead of pretending that those don't exist, we do the opposite. We highlight them. I want to see your Instagram photo wearing a bikini and like you've got like your beer belly sticking out. Yeah, if that's you, go for it. You know, dude, I want to see your photo posted online when you got acne on your face. It's you. Or that piercing you're insecure about, or the fact that your shoulders are too small, or whatever, man. Whatever your flaw is, it's because you're human. Because if you're perfect, if you're flawless, I don't think you can be human and be that. You can pretend to be, you can hide it. The perfect teeth, the perfect smile, the perfect life, the perfect happiness, the perfect wife, the perfect kids, or so they think. But that perfect wife cheated on you, and your dad has Alzheimer's, and your mom walked out, and you're like, man, everyone's got their problems, but you just hide them. Why? Because everyone's showing their best self. So now if everybody's photoshopping themselves on those social media apps, it's like, well, I have to too. And then we start to hide those flaws, as if being human is a bad thing. And we start moving away from being human and we start moving to being more like objects, being more like machinery. Well, we're not like that. Everyone's skin's different. Everyone's body's different. Our experiences are different. And I think there's been a lot of beauty in being honest in that. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. This has been another episode. I appreciate you. Every subscribe, like, follow, comment, Spotify, Apple Music. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Have an amazing 2022. I wish you the best, and I'll be here to see you in the new year. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.